Today we find ourselves in San Francisco. Behind me, that's the Bay Bridge and the San Francisco waterfront. And you might say to yourself, well, what's so remarkable about that? Well, the fact is, the spot I am standing in just a few years ago was inhabited by a noisy structure known as the Embarcadero Freeway, a two-tier highway which ran along San Francisco's waterfront. Today, that highway is gone, replaced by a wonderful boulevard which takes into account all modes of transportation. And the area is ringed by parks and trees and public gathering areas that allow you to just come here and enjoy yourself along the waterfront. It's a prime example of how transportation and car traffic can be designed to fit together to serve the needs of everyone while maintaining people places, a people-friendly atmosphere, a place where people will not feel endangered by cars or unwelcome. So this is a great place that the Open Planning Project thought we would come and investigate just how this boulevard came to be.
The Embarcadero is sort of the roadway that goes around the waterfront, in the northeast waterfront of the city. And sometime back in the 50s, when the whole country was crazy for freeways, the state built a freeway along the Embarcadero, and there was this ghastly elevated freeway.
As soon as the freeway was built in the 1950s, people realized it was a mistake, and there was a long-standing movement to get rid of it, led by folks like columnist Herb Caen.
Here in San Francisco, we have a long history of fighting against freeways wrecking our city. And long before I got to the city, before I was even born, there was already incipient movement in the city against this crisscrossing of the city with elevated 8-lane freeways. Thanks to the citizens getting involved and organizing into various neighborhood associations all over the city, neighborhood by neighborhood, the vast majority of the freeway plans for the city were derailed.
In 1989, there was a little bit of an earthquake here, and that earthquake shook and rumbled, and when all the shaking was done, we discovered that that Embarcadero Freeway, along with other things, had some pretty serious cracks in it. And the mayor at the time, Mayor Art Agnos, had the common sense to say, you know, rather than rebuilding that freeway, maybe we ought to knock it down, because for 40 years it's been a separator between the city and the waterfront.
When nature intervened, there was still a lot of debate about what to do with it. People were terrified that by removing this freeway and the others, we would have horrible traffic congestion, that Chinatown was really afraid that their businesses would suffer. So it was a very close vote at the Board of Supervisors, 6 votes to 5, that ultimately decided, let's tear this freeway down and replace it with the surface roadway.
Happily, we were able to knock down that freeway, and I think you've seen how wonderfully that turned out. It's a great space for people, for the trolleys, for bicycles, for pedestrians, for roller skaters. Everybody really enjoys the Embarcadero now.
Here we are out in the Ferry Building Plaza. Right now the roadway splits around this plaza in the middle. It was the result of a long debate, but here in the middle of the plaza is an outline which shows you where the freeway columns were. Gives you a sense of where these were, how big they were, and sort of this wall that we had built separating the city over here from the Ferry Building and the waterfront over here. We're standing actually right in the course of the freeway. You can kind of see behind me, there's a gap in the trees. The ramps to Washington and Clay Streets came right overhead where we're standing right now. So it headed through this green sward here, and then the Clay Street on-ramp came up this way now. You can see that Washington and Clay Streets on either side here are pretty quiet streets now. In their heyday, of course, they were incredible. They had 3 lanes of one-way traffic, either coming onto or coming off of the freeway. And you can see they built the buildings all kind of one level up here. So there's these really blank walls with hiding parking and all of this traffic. Now, unfortunately, we still have the bad buildings, but the freeway's gone. So one of the challenges that we have is, well, what do you do with buildings like this that really turn their back to the streets because the streets were so awful? We're standing at one of the historic markers along the Embarcadero with some historic photos of the freeway going up and coming down. First shot is this proposal for an elevated freeway. Then behind it, as you see the ferry building here, this is the ramps coming from the Bay Bridge. The stub ends. This was actually supposed to continue south along the waterfront. You can see the main freeway and then the Washington and Clay ramps splitting off of the main freeway, the parking lot underneath, and you can see what a barrier it was between the ferry building and the rest of the city. The post that we were showing earlier, that's these posts right here. Looking at the barrier posed by the freeway, you can see it's after the earthquake, so they've temporarily braced it. Here's the shot with the freeway gone.
Sometimes the greatest opportunities occur during tragedies. It's unfortunate, but we had a tragedy in New York in which a highway collapsed, fell to the ground. It wasn't an earthquake, but in December 1973, the West Side Highway came tumbling to the ground. As a result of that, we learned that we could manage the traffic, that traffic either diverts, changes its time, or actually shrinks by going to other modes of transportation. When the Embarcadero collapsed as a result of an earthquake, there were people in San Francisco that used New York as an example. We had our earthquake due to neglect, but they used it as an example where New York City was not rebuilding its elevated structure. In fact, New York took its elevated structure down entirely and built a boulevard at grade. And the Embarcadero found many of the same things happening, that there was actually a reduction in total traffic volume that was traveling the Embarcadero as people traveled around.
Well, I think what you see once you get the freeway out of here and the old industrial uses of the waterfront out of the way as well, is that it opens up for other uses. People moving around together, having a good time on the waterfront, enjoying the smells and sights and sounds of the bay, the seagulls, the pelicans, the fish, the seals, they're all right out here.
It carries trolleys, it carries cars, it carries bikes, it carries roller skaters, baby carriages, wheelchairs, every possible kind of mode and manner. And I always emphasize the benches. It's a wonderful place to sit and do nothing, and that's a very important use of public space. If you provide freeway space, you will cultivate and grow car trips, but the inverse turns out to be true as well. If you take away freeway space, you actually will see a lot of the car trips just disappear, go away. People start walking, they start biking, they start taking transit. There is not a fixed number of automobiles that you have to accommodate.
In both examples of the West Side Highway and the Embarcadero, both highways collapsed, both highways were removed. And what happened was almost magical. A waterfront that was kind of hidden from view underneath a highway, pedestrian access to the land across from there improved. Cars still travel both, but in fewer numbers. That transportation also includes bicycles and pedestrians and people just enjoying strolls and enjoying the waterfront. And it's added to the vibrancy of the communities adjacent to both the Embarcadero and to the West Side Highway.
Well, there's no question that the waterfront of San Francisco is a really fun place to visit. It's a really pleasant place to hang out if you enjoy sunshine and you enjoy the smell of the bay and you enjoy having a chance to go side by side with your friends on rollerblades or bicycles or just taking a nice stroll. It's fantastic.
I would say for cities from Seattle to New York, all around the world and all around the country who are thinking of tearing out their waterfront freeways, you can have a vital waterfront, have a good economy, still move the traffic.